Yes, card review time! Today, we're looking at the good, the bad, and everything in between for Snap's latest card, Cannonball!
Is it worth it?
What's up, nerds? Cannonball is a 5 energy, 8 power card that reads, on reveal, move the highest power enemy card here away. If you can't, destroy it with a rock. Overall impressions of Cannonball. This is hard to judge. This one's hard to judge, but I am leaning towards better than he seems. Or at least better than people are saying he is. He could end up just being like a 5-cost Stegron, which is not great. Or he could end up being a card that absolutely swings games and steals cubes like Shang-Chi, Elaheh, and Enchantress. To the mechanics of how this card works and functions in the game. Overall, real quick before I get to each individual point, I would just say think Stegron, except if the thing doesn't move, it gets blown up. It's pretty much the same exact card. But the first point here is it does not hit unrevealed cards. Now some cards that move stuff, like Juggernaut, do hit unrevealed cards, but Cannonball does not. Now aside from 2 exceptions, in order to get a destroy out of Cannonball, the other lanes need to be filled up or inaccessible, and inaccessible basically boils down to Space Throne that's already full, a miniaturized lab, or a Professor X lane. The only 2 exceptions, like I mentioned, is Colossus and Blob. Colossus, though, isn't going to get blown up because he can't be destroyed, but Blob, he's going bye-bye. The third point here is Armor and Kyra. Basically, if the lane that the card is in that couldn't move, so you know what I mean though. If Cannonball hits the thing and it would have destroyed it, if those lanes are protected by armor, or it's a 6-drop or 1-drop protected by Kyra, then it's not getting blown up. The second thing here is it adds a rock where the destroyed card was. Now the wording on the card is a little weird because it says destroy the card with a rock, but really it just means destroy the card and it gets replaced by a rock. And then last point here is that if there's a tie for the highest power things, it's going to pick at random, pretty much like every other card would. All right, what are the upsides of Cannonball? Well, the first thing here is he will absolutely be able to steal games and swing lanes. The fact that the highest power thing gets hit basically means you're winning that lane. Even if the highest power thing is like 5 power, well, you're putting 8 power there and you're knocking, let's just say 5 power to be super modest out of that lane. That's a 13-point swing. So I feel like anytime Cannonball is ever played into a lane, you're going to win that lane. What other card can really do that? Except for Elaheh, really. And Elaheh, you have to have priority and your board has to be set up. Both Cannonball, you just drop them down. You probably win the lane. Second point, second positive for Cannonball is the highest power clause is not limited like Shang-Chi would be. Shang-Chi, you have to do something that's 10 or higher power, but with Cannonball, it could be a 1 power thing. If that's the highest power thing in that lane, it's dying. And I think that's an upside. There's basically no limit to what Cannonball can hit. Anything in an armor lane, a Colossus, anything in a Cosmo lane, those 3 scenarios, yeah, obviously Cannonball's not going to work there, but aside from that, it doesn't really have too much of a counter. And the whole highest power thing applies to literally anything, any card. There's a lot of scenarios where Cannonball's going to be useful, where he probably doesn't seem to be useful simply because he's knocking out like a 4 power card from lane. Doesn't seem that great, but that's a 12 power swing in the Cannonball lane. All right, and the last point here is that 8 base power is no joke. It's no yoke. Let's just say absolute worst case scenario, you hit like a 1-drop that has 2 power out of that lane. You're still getting a 5/10 and pushing something out of the lane. I mean, that's pretty good. I would say worst case scenario Cannonball is just as good as a Gamora. So yeah, the power on this card is relevant, and 8 power, it's not little. All right, what are the bad parts about Cannonball? Every card doesn't have nothing but upsides. So what are the downsides? The downside to Cannonball is the first point here. It needs Professor X or to be in a junk archetype to make his destroy effect guaranteed. There's gonna be a lot of scenarios I can imagine where Cannonball hits something out of the lane. You win that lane, but that card went into another lane and caused you to lose the second lane where the thing bopped over to. That kind of sucks, and the only way to stop that really is to run Professor X or to do some sort of archetype like Annihilus or run Debris or just your general junk type stuff to where the lanes that Cannonball is knocking into are full, so you get that destroy effect. But I think that's the cool part about Cannonball is you're not really counting on the destroy effect. You're counting on the fact that their highest power thing's getting bopped into another lane. Second thing here is it's possible that the target effect proves not any better than Stegron. That's definitely a worry. I mean, I'm talking this card up, but in reality, it could end up just being like a 5-cost Stegron, and Stegron doesn't see play whatsoever. But to be fair, Stegron is just a card. It's just a random card that gets knocked out of the lane. Cannonball knocks the highest power card out of that lane. So I have a feeling Cannonball is not going to end up just being an expensive Stegron, but it's certainly possible. All right, on to a potential deck list for Cannonball. And now I think the two obvious ones that most people are going to think of are lockdown strategies and junk strategies. I am opting for a Professor X lockdown classic simple lockdown deck.
Well said.
But yeah, you're using Storm, Professor X, and Elaheh as your lockdown cards, and now Cannonball is your 4th lockdown card. Yeah, we have Nebula, Nightcrawler, and Jeff to be able to move into your Professor X lane. You also have Ms. Marvel to get power into your Professor X lane, so it's more easily won. And then you just win your second lane with Cannonball or Elaheh. If you have priority, you just close out with Elaheh. If you don't have priority, Cannonball will probably get the job done. And then we have Daredevil here just to make our Cannonball a better and more sure and confident play. We have Shang-Chi as just a backup lane winner. And then we have Iron Lad to hit all this great stuff. Iron Lad hitting Cannonball is great, hitting Professor X is great, hitting Elaheh is great, hitting Ms. Marvel is great, hitting Storm and Jeff and Nightcrawler also super great. So yeah, Iron Lad here is going to be very strong, and doing 2 effects that lock down or do Elaheh Cannonballs type stuff in one game is pretty nasty. All right, on to my recommendation and the spotlight cache for this week. I think so as far as spotlight keys go, using keys to open caches and trying to get Cannonball, I think it's easy to figure out what you should do. Basically, if you don't have Kitty or Ms. Marvel and you want Cannonball, absolutely use your keys to try and pick up Cannonball. Because Kitty Pryde and Ms. Marvel are both great cards. Ms. Marvel is obviously one of the best cards in the game. So worst case scenario, you get a card that's super duper good and Cannonball if you have to open 4 caches to get the one card that you want. Now as far as collector's tokens go, this is a little trickier. Because if you already have Ms. Marvel and Kitty Pryde, then obviously you're not going to want to open caches for a Cannonball. Well, at least I wouldn't want to. And 6k tokens on a card like Cannonball that's not proven, that does have the potential to be a flop, that sucks. It sucks to spend 6k tokens on something like that. So my recommendation for tokens is wait a few days and see if Cannonball is proving to be as good as I think he is, or if he just ends up being like just another Spider-Man Juggernaut Stegron type card. If that's the case, it's probably not worth the tokens. All right, that's it. Review over. If you wanted more, you're not getting any more. Review's done. But yeah, Cannonball's really interesting. I'm excited for this card. I think he's being underrated and overlooked. But if there's any other type of scenarios, decks that you guys think that he's going to be really cool in, leave them in the comment section below. But for now, I'm done. So later.